Good evening to all of you as attendees go. Thank you, all of you, for being present here. And I know that you are as distinguished as these panel members are here today. Arun Sitaram, who is an advisor to the state government on higher education and a number of other things. He is here today. BK Prasad, who is chairperson for Karnataka on the Indian Plumbing Association, is here. Dr. Upendra Raval, who is a water scientist, a limnologist, 1967, and a PhD in 1973 is here. And when he talks on the science of water, a lot of us just shut up and listen to it. It's English, but I don't understand a lot of things that he says. And we need to see how he mainstreams some of his ideas on the science of water into what is being practiced today as treatment. Sanjay Gupta is here from Hyderabad. Sonali Patil is here. Suresh Pai is here from Boston, I think. Good morning to you, Suresh. Well, we have Apurva Shah from Ahmedabad, many others here. I will leave it there. I've acknowledged the presence of some of you, and there will be more who will join as we go along. What I will do is this. There are a few things. To the rest of you who are participants here today, I must say that last evening I sent a set of notes to set the context for this evening's discussion. This is not to me a webinar. This is more a discussion where we expect to learn some key and very significant things that we can tell the government or the administration, the elected member or the administrator. How do we do that has been more than one half the challenge. It is not for want of solutions, as all of you will agree, whether you're panel members or you're otherwise present here. It is not for want of solutions that we are not able to get many things off the ground in India and across its 7,000 cities and towns and agglomerations and all that. Here we have, we have chosen 5-6 people here who are representing the entire spectrum. Some come from the rigor of research combined with doing. There are people like Vijayaraj who have only been doing, and for instance, on inundation threats in the city and the kinds of projects that he has, shall we say, executed for the government will open some people's eyes here when you listen to him. We have Dave here who is no newcomer to India. He's been working, I think, in Gurgaon and Haryana and NCR, trying to see what he can do with lakes and such. He's also tried to see what he can do with a couple of other towns in Tamil Nadu. Dr. Nulkar is based in Pune. His work has been on 2 rivers there, and he will tell you more on what we need to do beyond all these wonderful things on the catchments and how you nurture and nourish catchments of those rivers that feed our cities and beyond cities. Well, that's it, I think, for now. I don't want to say more. Nirmala will present a few things. She has even got to manage to rile. She has got to manage to rile a few people in the government with things that she has said to them, and she will speak about this. One request from all of you as panelists here, and then those of you who are experts out there who will pitch in as you want, as we go along, be as candid as possible. We are recording this. If you are precise in what you're saying, we might even pull out a few things that can be utilized and will be heard on YouTube elsewhere by many more hundreds of people beyond those who are attending here today. Sharad, out of deference to what you have requested, I will let you go first, but I'd like you to remain. After the first 3 minutes, everyone gets a turn at 3 minutes. And then I'd like to see what you can tell us after, let's say, 18 to 20 minutes from here. But before Sharad speaks, Kirti Bhai, about 3-4 minutes from you.
Thank you, Haran Sab. One of the reasons I wanted to kind of, come and meet everyone was this, that, this particular webinar series is going on for last 2 years. This is the 80th of the webinar series. And you won't believe me, but I have not missed 1 minute of one webinar ever in last 2 years. So I wanted to kind of keep my record straight and unblemished. And therefore, I thought, even though it's difficult, I'm in a meeting here, I would come and tell you briefly. I think what I want to say is this. I want to tell very briefly why we are doing this webinar series for the last 2 years. The context is this. And I think while we are talking about Bangalore, I really want you to, and while you're talking about water, I really want you to kind of look at the larger picture of Indian cities and Indian urbanization. Basically speaking, an understanding that's developed, and we have thought that the way we are going about dealing with cities and urbanization, uh, we are nowhere near what we should be in terms of meeting the urban challenge. And not being able to do that, I think, is going to be very, very expensive for us. Expensive for a large number of people already in the city in terms of their quality of life, and people who are walking in cities. As a matter of fact, as we know very well, that by 2050, Indian cities are likely to have 870 million people, almost double in the next 30 years' time. We are nowhere near, I think, prepared to kind of meet this particular challenge. And the cities essentially display all the time how unprepared we are. Now, this unpreparedness is very expensive for us, both in terms of quality of life of the people, as well as because cities are engines of economic growth. Kind of, and if we have a $5 trillion, $10 trillion economy, I think dreams is not going to work out if cities are not productive, cities are not where they should be. Other concern that we have is this, that, if you got to kind of think a paradigm shift, you got to think about cities differently, you got to deal with these challenges differently. And that difference, that doing it differently, it doesn't appear coming through the conventional, traditional actors, be that government, be that academic institution, be that even private sector. So we thought that we require a new societal partnership to deal with this major challenge we have. So this particular series that we're running essentially is part of the dream, trying to kind of build a societal partnership. I'm not saying we're succeeded. I'm saying we're meeting lots of people. I'm saying we're meeting lots of ideas, and hopefully this will build something on. So with this very introductory, very fast, very disjointed sort of introduction, you please go ahead. I have to move out, because
you could spend the next 10 minutes, Kirti. Listen to.
No, I think I'll just go and see what is happening, and I'll come back. Huh?
Okay,
sure.
But
thank you very much, and I think let me take this opportunity, because I may not be around at the end of the thing.
Sure. Don't worry.
To thank all panelists, and to thank Haranji to picking up this particular challenge and organizing these two webinars and at a very short notice.
Sure.
Thank you, Haranji.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirti. Over to you, Sharad, Lele, without any further ado.
Hi. First of all, thanks, Hari, for organizing this, for inviting me. And not just this, but as Kirti said, the whole series. It's a massive effort over 2 years. It's just pretty amazing that you've had it organized and kept it going in this fashion.
We have had
congratulations
over
for that.
250 speakers, Sharad. Over 250 speakers so far.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We have a
that's just
solid
amazing.
compendium, both visual and some in the print form. And to the rest of you here, I'm sure you listen to Kirti. We must bring together people. We work too often we work in silos. Over to you, Sharad, again.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that it is amazing that COVID has sapped many people's stamina, but clearly not yours or Kirti's. So congratulations. Also, my apologies because I completely misestimated the situation in terms of internet here. I'm in a taluka town in Telangana in Adilabad district, and working on a completely different topic, which is forest rights. And yet I want to make a link between the two, because I think at the core of the questions that Hari or INHAF or Kirti is asking about the urban sector or about specifically the water sector, maybe triggered by the recent floods in Bangalore and so on. I think that at the core, one common problem across the remote boonies of Telangana, where you have Adivasis, collecting forest produce, and the IT sector, electronic city facing floods in Bangalore, is the lack of democratization. It is the lack of democratization of our whole political system, our planning and our management system of natural resources. And I think the example from the urban sector, or in the context of water, what we see, the question that Hari had posed in his sort of background note and email was, for instance, how do we get BWSSB from being not just a water supply and sewerage board? Frankly speaking, BWSSB right now is a Kaveri water supply and sewerage board. And that's true for most utilities in most cities, whether it's Metro Water or somebody, that they have converted their mission to bringing water from far away and delivering it through massive pipes and then through the pipe network. They are civil engineers and they thrive on bigger and bigger projects. How do we convert these utilities, which are sort of parastatals? They are not directly under the urban 74th Amendment government. So I think that therein lies the clue that I think we need to bring in, a certain democratization of these parastatals. They need to be under the city government. They need to be a part of the city government, not separate, not answerable to the state government, but to the city government. And secondly, obviously, a city like Bengaluru with 1 crore people and whatever 200 or now 200 and whatever X wards, there is a further challenge that you cannot really have a democratic government of 200 wards with 50,000 people in each ward. You would have to have much smaller level of decision making and planning, which means you have to further think of how do you decentralize water related decision making or all decision making to the ward level or below. And I think there we have a big challenge, because 74th Amendment and even whatever implications that the courts have drawn from 74th Amendment to city governance is pretty meager. It's pretty sparse, and we have to think of ways in which water governance will happen at a ward level. And that water governance is not about Kaveri water supply and its distribution, but about the total one water kind of thinking, where we think about rainwater, lake water, groundwater, and then of course recycling of used water or polluted, semi-polluted grey and black water. So this is just my short comment that I think at the heart of this problem lies the question of democratic control and decentralized democratic control. Otherwise, it is not really democratic.
Fair. Sharad, you come from the disadvantage of not having heard some of the panelists who spoke at the last session last week, which is, shall we say, part 1 of this discussion. Now, this morning, Dave writes to me saying, we are too locked into a logistics-based approach to water resource management, supply side, demand side, and logistics to balance the two, and so on. And he says that, provoked by some things that Sandeep, who is here, Sandeep Aniruddin, talked about at the previous session last Thursday, I think. Now, if it is all right with you all, in order to sort of, bring greater focus and anchor what you will all be speaking about, I would like to see if you will permit me to, have this 3-minute spell of Sandeep shown to all of you. Unless, Gurudas, you say, no, I have heard it. I heard him talk about a reductionist and so on. And therefore, you want me to skip it. I'm okay. Either way, we can always get Sandeep to speak. He's here and he's listening to us.
No, please, let's go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Dave, are you all right if I were to show that part of it? Only those maybe about 180 seconds of it. Great. Thank you.
Yep.
There you go, Ankisha. The film with the audio worked out by you. Yes, Sharad. Sharad, you'll see how he's resonating a lot of the things.
I was just saying, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it.
Wonderful. Yeah. You'll see how he's reflecting a lot of the things you said. The film, please. Yeah.
Whole point of governance and planning. This is where we are failing. And to have proper governance and planning, we need to have a holistic understanding. That is also missing. Unfortunately, it is a leftover from colonialism, because colonialism was based on Western thinking, which is reductionist. The entire Western science is based on reductionism. So it disconnects itself from nature. That is one big loss because of our period of colonialism. But what are we doing to overcome it now? Because the entire world is see, all those mistakes the West made in India, they've corrected in their own countries. No. See, the essential part of decolonizing is a path towards finding Swaraj. Gandhiji spoke about it in 1908. He said, I don't want the British to leave if they give us Swaraj. What did he mean? He meant empowering the grassroots. Do we have that after 70 years? No. Why did I succeed in my campaign? Because I got all the people in our area together. We held a protest with 5,000 people on the street to save that small lake. We did it thrice. Now, when people come together, when they take it as their responsibility, that is when we have success. Now, 74th Amendment has prescribed that for the entire country. It has said, along with Panchayati Raj, cities should have ward committees, area sabhas, and metropolitan planning committee, along with the city government. The city government should have all the services under it. You shouldn't have a BWSSB separately. You shouldn't have a BESCOM separate. You should. So what do we have? We have a complete mess. We have so many cooks. City government should have all of this integrated. We should get rid of all the parastatals. We should have a central governing body. We should have a mayor who gives a vision, and the mayor who has authority to control the vision of the city and also implement governance in the city for 5 years. All our problems will disappear. Why is it not happening? Because the state government treats the city as a colony. We are facing colonization today. We should to decolonize. We should give power to the grassroots, to the citizens, and to the mayor. This ought to happen. And we should have a water policy. We've been talking about a water policy forever. We have to have an integrated water policy for the city. I think a lot of organizations have been working in the city also towards it. What should it be? It should be based on localization. Why? Because any concept on sustainability talks about localization. Anything which is not localized is not sustainable. We should have water treatment in our buildings and in our apartments. We should have water collection in our buildings and in our apartments. We should have water supply also in our boards. I think a water board's purpose was wrongly prescribed to BWSSB to get water from 100 kilometers away. What they ought to have done is continue with the traditional water bodies we have here, protect them, revive them, and rejuvenate them. We should have protected it. Instead, what did we do? We built Kaveri pipeline to Bangalore and we got rid of all our lakes. The lakes of Bengaluru, 1,800 of them, had the capacity to hold more water than we require, but we have destroyed them. In fact, if we recycle water and reuse it in the city, we have one more Kaveri water supply. And if we even use 10 or 20% of our rainwater, we have one more Kaveri. We have 3 times water capacity in Bangalore right now, and we are crying that Kaveri itself is not able to supply. This holism is required, which our ancestors had. They built water capacity for the city 10 times, 20 times more than what they require. We are unable to save that. That is the shame that we have to hold ourselves to.
Okay, there we go. Sharad, you wanted to speak. Yes, Sharad. You have to unmute, Sharad. Yeah. Sharad, you have to unmute and speak. Oh, he's gone off, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So just to add, I think I don't probably disagree with anything that Sandeep is saying in essence. Just to add a couple of things, I think the water policy question that he raised. So there's a further tragedy here, which is that the state government, through the Karnataka Knowledge Commission, constituted a water policy task force. And in 2019, this water policy task force, of which I was a member, and 20 other people were members, including Vishwanath, who's a well-known water conservationist, and Himanshu Kulkarni from Pune, and Mihisha was the chair, and so on. We submitted a very detailed report for the state water policy. We had drafted a new state water policy, which is a completely different approach compared to the past, which is entirely about integration on the one hand and decentralization and democratization on the other hand. Taking those two principles, we've drafted a whole policy across all sectors: urban, rural, agriculture, industry, and so on. And what happened to that policy is basically it was thrown into the dustbin. And it sat and did the rounds of the departments. It was then dusted off and gone.
Today's discussion, we must at the end of this get a little wiser on how we get the ear of the politician and the bureaucrat or the administrator, right? That is what I'm hoping to. So if we berate the government, we are not going to get anywhere. And too many people have done it with too many billions of words wasted, shall we say, Sharad. So maybe you want to come back.
Well, I think I disagree with that. I think what Sandeep is saying, and I'm also saying, is that we will have to work from the grassroots upwards to create pressure, which makes the government, change its behavior.
That's a wonderful way of saying it. And I request you to be around. You will hear some of Gurudas very well, so he doesn't need any introduction to you. But I'll first go to David, if it's all right with the rest of you. David, you wrote today saying we reduce it all to engineering, and then you went further to say we need to manage water as a renewable resource all the time everywhere, not just when it is in the pipes of our infrastructure. In a sense, you were therefore capturing in these two sentences, please mute the others, Antisha. You were capturing what Sandeep has said and what Sharad has now lucidly explained. And Sharad has been, presiding over these things probably for about 10 years. He's a pretty vocal person and a voice that sometimes gets heard in the government. Over to you, David.
I think I must start by saying the sort of politics and government isn't necessarily my area of expertise, and particularly when it's localized to a particular country. But what I do see that is common in the US, in India, in the UK, in South Africa, and so on, is exactly what Sandeep says, is this reductionist thinking, where it's ingrained in our scientific training, particularly in the engineering world, where we want to break it down into bite-sized chunks, and then, which in this means effectively breaking it down into silos. And then if someone looks after their silo, they're all good. The danger with that, and the illustration we often use is, they say a human body is made up of 50% carbon and 20% hydrogen and 15% oxygen, whatever. If I give you carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, this, that, the other, you're not going to be able to make a human body, because there are levels of emergence. The whole being greater than the sum of the parts, which those elements become molecules, the molecules become biochemicals, the biochemicals become living organisms, eventually they become humans, and then we have societies and so on. And just some illustrations of this. I attended a conference of the global beverage industry water resource management group. And this was obviously, the big beverage companies, the big breweries, the big food producers. What struck me particularly about that was their focus was, when the water arrives in our factory, how well do we use it and clean it to the point where we discharge it from our factory? And so, to me, what they run is the risk, which I think you referred to earlier, of the IT tech part, is you might have thousands of acres of reservoir of unusable water. So when it arrives at your factory, you can't use it. A similar situation has happened in South Africa. You have Johannesburg and Pretoria, which is the big metropolitan center. It's the only metropolitan complex in the world, apparently, that did not develop near water, a river or a lake or a coast or whatever. It developed where the gold was, and the gold was right up at the top of the watershed. So there's virtually no water. What they've done is taken water from one watershed, built extensive tunnels and dams and so on, transferred it to another one. So that's a complete re-engineering of watersheds. From there, it is fed up to Johannesburg, where it provides drinking water. The way the wastewater flows and so on, once that water is treated, it effectively, 70% of it is transferred into a third watershed. Now, in the last century, they built a series of dams around Johannesburg, the idea being that they could reuse that water. Those dams have become so eutrophic that the water cannot be used. So the solution now is to build phase 2 of transferring water from the Lesotho mountains and so on. That solution, there's one particular dam which currently receives 700 megaliters a day of treated wastewater. Somebody did a calculation and said it could probably cope with 100 megaliters. Phase 2 of the solution is going to increase that to about 1,200 from 700. So a solution in this silo is going to make that silo much worse. You see the same sort of thing, I don't know if how aware people are, but in Cape Town, about 4 or 5 years ago, they had about 3 years of drought, they had no water and so on. I was speaking at a conference there with the head of the government head of water, and also a marketing person, I guess, from there. And the two big things that they stressed in their talks was, one, they had what they believed was the most successful program to get people to install rainwater collection tanks at their houses. They were in the middle of a drought. There was no rainfall to collect, and yet they thought this was an effective solution, and we're blowing the PR horns around that. The other thing, the water from their storage dams inland comes down to the coast, goes through the wastewater plants, and is discharged offshore. So already they are having a problem with toxic algae blooms offshore.
David,
and they said, we're going with a massive desalination.
I'm sort of butting in because we know the bad news. We know how these guys act, and they've done so for the last 50 years, from at least 1970. Initially, we thought it's an age of ecological innocence, that they were doing it out of ignorance. But no, these guys are perverse. 1994, Paul Hawken, and you know what he said. And we all take it for granted that governments will be like this, and we live with it. I'm saying let's go beyond that. Let's see what we can do in the next 10 years. What is that one jump shifting kind of idea that can get, well, some of us here to make these guys listen to us? For instance, Mr. Tippeswamy is here. He's been in the water supply board for some 35 years. I know what he has as technical or technological solutions, but no one's willing to listen to him. And when you get out of the government, you get listened to even less. So Dave, my question to you, one or two singular things that you think we can deploy or employ as, I don't know, as techniques, perhaps, bad word, I mean, not the most appropriate, in a way that we are able to get these guys to stir to action?
Well, to me, it is about finding people who have the perspective, the minds, the thinking to be able to take a broader view and understand what integrated water resource management is all about. As long as you bring in experts to manage water supply, they will manage supply of water. Once it's been supplied and used and discharged, they've done their job. So Meethi River in Mumbai was a classic example. They had big floods there in early 2000s. And one of the main reasons for the floods was because the rivers were all blocked up and couldn't drain. So they opened up the drainage. So in flood times, it drains well. Now what they have is big, wide, deep river, the Meethi River. For the other 9 months of the year, it is stagnant and septic and so on. They came to us and said, can we do a solution? And we said, yeah, but what you need, we gave them a proposal. But you have to think, we have a saying that says we've got to think upstream, downstream, side stream, backstream. You have to think through the unforeseen consequences. Desalination is going to be the next thing that causes major problems, because it has already been proved scientifically that the discharge from desalination causes offshore toxic blooms. And then you can't use the water. So once you've desalinated it and made fresh water of it, keep it fresh, keep recycling, keep using. And then that leads into some of what I think you were saying, is we need to treat water as close to use as possible. Get it as modular, get it as close. You still need the big ones, but the sooner you can treat your water and restore quality, the sooner it can be reused. As long as it's going downstream and the contamination and deterioration of water quality is compounding, you're just creating a worse and worse problem, even if your wastewater plant is compliant, your little silo. Somebody's got to get above the silos and say, how does this all work, so that we can get renewable water and reuse it.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. Gurudas, can I turn to you? Well, to the rest of you, particularly those who are participating from the other side of it all, I must tell you that Gurudas has worked on 2 rivers in Pune, and he has been working on the catchment of the rivers in order to see how you can strengthen that. And why is this important? In every city, the challenge that we are having is that the quantum of water that we need is increasing, while the quantum of water that the rivers that feed the cities are diminishing. Over to you, Gurudas.
Yeah, thank you. At the outset, let me say that I do not profess any knowledge about Bangalore's water supply. So I'm here not to discuss that, but the other aspects of that. And I would like to start off with extending upon what David has just said about reductionist way of managing water. One of the key reasons is why this is being done is essentially a philosophical reason. And that is that we have been managing water, which is a renewable resource, exactly the same way as we manage our non-renewable resources. You know, the standard way of managing a non-renewable resource is to extract it and then wash your hands off. It's done. We have taken out iron ore, we have taken out bauxite, we have taken out gold, emptied the coal mines and run away and went to some other place. That's exactly how we are managing our renewable resources. We do not have the understanding that we need to manage a renewable resources in its entire life cycle, which means the hydrological cycle has to be managed. Now, this is exactly what we have done to the soil in agriculture. We have completely removed the phosphate from the nitrates from the first fertilizer. You know, we have lost rock phosphate, we have lost the phosphate. That's because we are treating it as a non-renewable resource. And in the same way, we are treating water. So for example, Bangalore water supply has got no reason to be worried about something which happens in the source region, or they've got no reason to worry about what happens to the polluted water downstream, or they've got no reason to be worried about what happens to the groundwater sources within Bangalore city. You know, what is the urban sprawl, what is the development work doing to the groundwater discharge zones or the recharge zone. So that is one. Now, extending this philosophical idea into practice, if we do not raise the price of fresh water more than the price of recycling water, then we will never have a good, effective management of a renewable resource. I would like to start with this and then again get back.
You know, in 1926, in a tract that Patrick Geddes wrote, I'm sure you've read this, I'm saying this for the rest of them here, he talked about industrial cost. And he said that if you don't add this ecological cost to it, you will not have a fair price that you can arrive at. David, I'm sure you're aware of this wonderful man. He was an anthropologist, British. 1919 or 1918, he comes to India. He does the urban planning for 7 of our cities. He left India, I think, in 1931 or 32. So, well, you know, for 100 years nearly now, people have been talking, therefore, of what Gurudas Nulkar is telling us. But we need to see how we therefore put that premium. How do we rationalize water tariffs, a story that you and I are tired of talking about and listening to for the last 30, 35 years. May I now invite Nirmala to respond to what has so far been said by the other 3 minds here. You have to unmute, please. Yeah, you have to unmute there. Yeah. No, not yet. Okay. Is there a problem to, should we have to, Ankisha?
Yes, the host had to do it. Can you hear me?
We got it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Hari. Before I say my piece, I want to respond to Sharad Lele's speaking about Karnataka Knowledge Commission. Can I do that? Yeah. So Karnataka Knowledge Commissions, that is Karnataka Jnana Ayog's report on Karnataka state water policy is, as a matter of paradigm shifting, and it very much says what Sandeep Aniruddhan was saying with very specific action plans in there. And it has a state level water resources regulation council, then it has a basin level council, then it goes to the sub-basin level council, and then it comes to the water committees at the Gram Panchayati levels and the urban local bodies. So one thing for us citizens, and especially for me, it is a go-to document in terms of really kind of understanding. It's very comprehensive in its approach and very specific in its action. If we could rally the citizens to kind of, ask for the government to implement it, I think that's one very specific action that we could talk about, right? So that's what I wanted to comment on Sharad's. And here is my piece, and it kind of is integrated water resources management that Dave and everybody else is talking about. That's the reason we founded Paani.Earth, was to kind of, in a way, democratized water data, right? So here, there are two parts to what I'm saying here. The first part being the lack of the governance itself. The second part being the lack of enforcement of the existing regulations itself. And both of these are coming from our own experiences on the ground. So I have both a frog's eye view and the bird's eye view here at this point in time. So in terms of the bird's eye view, why the constant question we keep asking is, what about rivers? Why are rivers not part of the mainstream conversation? And what is our relationship with rivers? Firstly, they're all connected, meaning the streams, the lakes, the wetlands, the ponds, all sorts of surface water and groundwater, they're all connected. Second, today waste flows in our natural river corridors without exception, and water flows in our man-made pipelines. Especially I'm referring to the waste flowing through our Kavati and Vrishabhavati rivers down to Kaveri in Bengaluru, and also the fresh Kaveri water flowing upstream to the Bengaluru for drinking purposes. And the situation is very, very stark for these rivers, right? Mostly forgotten in all this chaos is wildlife. They need water just like us. This is just completely out of the equation. Third, a wide range of human activities affect the river. Say, for example, in Arkavati, you have dams, industrial clusters, big ones, sewage treatment plants, industrial effluent treatment plants, hazardous waste landfills, urban centers, open pit quarries, hydropower plants. These human activities, which are major stressors, are managed by various agencies: BWSSB, BBMP, KTCDA, Kaveri Niravari Nigama, Minor Irrigation, KSNDMC, BDA, Forest Department, KIADB as in the industries, KSSIDCs, Karnataka Renewable Energy Department, Central Water Commission, Departments of Mines and Geology. There are like 20 of them, including the urban and rural local bodies as well. So it's quite an alphabet soup. And like you're saying, they all work in silos. They don't interoperate, share data at all. So it seems to me, for the conservation and protection of our water resources, rivers, governance at the river basin level is the need of the hour. So that's my first piece. The second piece is the lack of enforcement of the existing regulations itself. Policy and regulation is one thing. Then enforcement is a completely different beast. We fail miserably here as well. Enforcement of existing regulations are either weak or completely non-existent. There's rampant lawlessness when we see on the ground. Great example of this failure of enforcement of the existing laws is our failure of protection of the drinking water catchment of Tippagundanalli Dam on Arkavati River. Like you're saying, it's a great renewable drinking water resource that we lost over the span of 80 years. And what's very interesting with this particular dam, Tippagundanalli Dam, which used to supply drinking water to Bangalore, 3 TMC of drinking water to Bangalore, is that this dam was built specifically for drinking purposes and has been lost right now. So today it stands there as a testimony to the wanton destruction of the very river that provided with precious drinking water, and not to mention the water for the economic progress of Bengaluru. So Arkavati is like the Kaveri of the past, right? So this is the second piece, and I had a third piece on democratization, but I think we will talk about it as we go on. Thank you, Hari. Back to you. Hari, are you there?
Sir, you're on mute. Haran, sir.
Unmute. Okay. She has to unmute me. You have to solve this challenge, Ankisha, that we are not able to unmute ourselves. Gurudas, I was talking to you. I'm so sorry that you couldn't hear me. Oh, okay. See, I'm only saying this. Nirmala said something about governance and the river basin. Any quick take on that in the next 30 seconds or so, after which I'll ask Sharad to see if he wants to say something on the Knowledge Commission, then I'll turn to Vijayaraj.
Yeah, I think I just want to add to what Nirmala said, and that's a very pertinent point, especially in the governance part. For example, let me give you the example of Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, groundwater is managed by the Groundwater Survey Development Authority, GSDA. Right? However, the surface of in urban land is not at all under their purview. So, for example, they're completely disconnected from what is happening on the surface, because what is happening on the surface will dictate what is happening below the ground. And if they have no authority on the surface in urban sprawls, like, for example, BMRDA or PMRDA, which is going to be around 6,000 square kilometers, and GSDA has got no authority at all, then we are completely going to reduce our groundwater aquifers to zero. I mean,
I get that.
So that is one aspect. Yeah.
Sorry, finish that. That's one aspect. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, that's one aspect. The second is the irrigation engineers. And I'm very sorry to say that, most of the water supply is managed only by the irrigation engineer. That is the highest form of centralization which the colonies have left us with, exactly what Sandeep Aniruddhan was saying. So is the highest level of centralization is found in the surface water, and the highest level of decentralized use is found in groundwater. Anybody can use the groundwater to whatever extent he wants or she wants, with no control on the government. We can completely discharge the aquifers, and nobody has any control of that. So that governance aspect has to bring in this balance between surface water management and groundwater management, centralized management and decentralized management. We have absolutely no solution at the moment for this.
Are you just bewailing, or are you going to suggest some direction, since you are a person who is being heard in some quarters?
Yeah, so I think we will come to that towards the end, as I listen to the others also.
Fair enough. Sharad, you wanted to say something?
Sharad, yeah, so I just wanted to thank, first of all, Nirmala for reminding the audience about the way the Karnataka water policy went into the dustbin. I am also really excited by her comments and her point that I think we have to rally people around that policy document, because it has, I think, although I'm saying this with certain conflict of interest, I was a member secretary of that task force, but I do think that we made a big breakthrough in terms of changing the way water policy documents are written. And I'm in the process of spending my own money to get it translated into Kannada, because one example of colonial mentality was that the Knowledge Commission refused to pay for translating a Karnataka water policy document into Kannada. It said it was not its job. So, so we are spending our own money to do that, and I'm hope to release that Kannada version of at least a brief version of the whole policy document very soon.
Who do you hope to
Nirmala is absolutely right. We need to rally around such ideas. Number one. Number two, I want to respond to Gurudas' point about GSDA versus groundwater and surface paving being done by cities and so on. And I think, Gurudas, my sense is that this cleavage between disciplines, environment being an interconnected entity or process, there's always going to be things that we cut across. We cut across linkages, however we run the jurisdictions. Even if you decentralize to a ward level and say the ward should manage everything, energy, water, land, everything, but the ward's carbon footprint has implications for the globe. So unless there is a global compact, you can't talk about what the ward should do. So we always have these problems. I just feel that a decentralized democracy approach brings the users in charge of taking decisions, and the users are the ones who are integrative, because to a large extent users face both the scarcity and the pitfalls of floods and so on and so forth. So they have a certain amount of vested interest in integrating. But as Nirmala pointed out, it won't happen in silos. If decentralization is not a silver bullet, because if decentralization simply means that now wards are in charge of their own futures, they still don't then care how much water they pump from the Kaveri. But that implication is for downstream Tamil Nadu or somebody else. The implication of pumping water from the Kaveri is not for them. So in that sense, we do need the tiered structure that also is mentioned in the water policy document, that we have to have water rights allocations that start from the top and go downwards, and that includes ground and surface water together, because Gurudas is absolutely right about the farcical difference between surface water being state property and groundwater being a complete free for all. I just want to bring in a word of, realism, which is that knowledge always lags behind happenings in the technology sector. So technology of groundwater pumping came 30 years ago, and it has revolutionized that sector, because even 50 years ago, nobody would have visualized that, half of Bangalore's water comes from groundwater. So we can allow a little bit of slippage, saying, the knowledge about what that means for base flows in rivers has lagged behind. That speaks to the fragmentation of our knowledge systems, the groundwater hydrologists not being in touch with the civil engineers. But at the end of the day, we have to again build that understanding at the citizen level. And I think we are very far away from building that understanding, whether it is knowledge or whether it is the pressure.
Got that. Vijayaraj, you come from a context of doing. You've done over 240,000 buildings in various states across the country. You have helped the government on those regular tender-based kinds of offers and proposals into, mitigating their inundation threats and so on. You have created one large railway station right here in Bangalore. I think it's the largest station now, Baitnalli, and you have made it, inundation-free again. So these are people coming from another end, call it, if you like, the directive end of such approaches, while you come from the bottom end, the inductive end of doing things. What's your take? You have listened to all of them, Vijay. Vijay? Did we lose him again? I'm jinxed whenever it comes to, yeah, there you are, yeah. No, your network is poor. We can't see your video is off. Vijay? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Please.
Yes, sir. So as a solution provider, I see the whole prospect of what happened in Bangalore in a very different prospect. Because what is happening is everybody are talking about Raj Kalways and how the water has to be addressed. And all the energy we have put addressing today is at the downstream side. We have not thought where the problem starts and where it ends. Every whole of energy now, if you see, whole of energy of the Bangalore is, taking the solution from the downstream side. But we have to see how we can manage. If we see our borewell waters are about 0.5 kilometer down, 1,500 feet deep. And we have got enough of water. Just to give you an example, see, development is inevitable. There are a lot of policies in place. We are only talking about the government side, and what is that the civilians have done it. If you take any of the schools, any of the big schools, each and every inch of the playground is being paved today. If you go out just on the road and see, each and every inch of the land is paved. We don't have allowed any water to percolate. One. Second, we have closed all the the wells, open wells, which used to be source where it could have taken the water. And once we have closed that, what happens after 2 or 3 rainfall, whole of these open lands are saturated. They don't have got enough space to again take the water. Earlier, what used to happen, there were open wells. We used to remove the water in non-rainy days. Again, the earth would have been ready to take the water. We have forgotten all those things. Even in the parks, even in the government parks, we are using borewells to water the park. Where are we heading towards? You take Cubbon Park, for example. I have studied Cubbon Park for last about 7 years. Deep in the summer, we have got water at 14 feet. And the same place, the borewell water is at 500 feet. So what I am telling is, just I am giving you an example. Other day when it rained, each house of just 1,200 square feet of roof area, 10,000 liters of water, 10,000 liters of.
We lost you again, Vijay. Your audio is correct.
2 lakh on the other side.
You have to repeat that last sentence. I think we lost you somewhere. Okay. Vijay, one last. Maybe you want to come back again?
To hear me, sir?
No, yeah, off and on. Now we can hear you. Go on, please. Yeah, finish the thought.
So, yeah, what I was telling was each street in Bangalore gave about 4 lakh liters of water. Imagine the colossal quantity of the water that came into the road. If everybody would have stored their water in the tanks, because each and every house has got just 1,200 square feet of. area house has got about 5,000 to 6,000 liter of a tank and a borewell. If you take every alternate house has got a borewell which is 800 to 1,000 feet. If we had into the tanks and reused it, and then overflow, if you had allowed it to recharge your borewell, we wouldn't have sent so much of water to the storm drain. There is a policy that says 6 liters of the roof, from a square feet of roof area, you should save the water and reuse. If everybody have done it in the upstream, we wouldn't have faced so much of problem in the downstream. Only thing is the implementation part should be taken care. Government need not spend so much of things, and now because it has already been done, we cannot decongest the thing. Large highways have been encroached, everything fine. But if we had planned, whatever is been said and done, whatever the legislation has been passed, if it is implemented, in the verbatim, and then we can take care in the upstream that we don't allow that water to gush in, so that we can always solve. Hardly last 20 to 30 minutes of the peak water flow, that we can surely see a lot of things can be done with the existing infrastructure.
May I stop you there, Vijay? Is it okay?
Yes.
Vijay, can I take Sharad has raised his hand, and after that there is a person called Aras who wants to speak. Sharad, a quick word from you since you have raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to say Vijay is absolutely right, but in the sense that there is already a regulation about rainwater harvesting, which has been basically implemented in the breach. The level of implementation is not even 10%.
Right.
And it ties to the institutional fragmentation, because who's the implementer? It is BWSS. You have to implement a rainwater harvest rule, nothing at all, because that means that much less water to be brought from Kaveri, whereas their incentives are all about building one more pipeline, one more stage 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So I think that's where again the institutional issues are very much tied to the fact that we have a legislation on rainwater harvesting that is not being implemented. I want to introduce a word of caution to all of us, saying that we are in a phase of climate change where rainfall intensities are unprecedented. These kinds of rain intensities have not been seen in the past, not even when the soil was completely uncovered by cement and completely open to agriculture and so on. We have not seen these intensities in this part of the country, and therefore there will be some unpredictable consequences. We do not have silver bullet solutions again saying, okay, so rainwater harvesting will solve all the problems. You might have more intense storms next year which still trump the rainwater harvesting solution, but we have to put the pieces together, and this is a very critical piece. Whether it contributes 30% or 25% of the solution, that's not the issue, but we are at 0% right now in terms of using rainwater harvesting as a significant solution, both for floodwater retention and for of course, carrying it over into the summer. And rainwater harvesting has these two components: some storage and groundwater recharge. And it's the groundwater recharge component which is also going to give you a slightly longer term carryover into the summer.
Got that. Thank you. Nagesh Aras, you've been wanting to speak for quite some time. Your hand still continues to be raised. Would you want to speak now, Nagesh Aras?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. See, basically, my point is that this flood. I mean, I hope we are, talking in the specific context of the recent flooding, actually.
Right.
So we have already, as you said in the very beginning, that everybody is aware that this is an engineering issue, a hydrological issue, basically. Correct. And we also know that who is responsible for that, right? I mean, who is supposed to do a 9 to 5 job to look after it, but who did not. And therefore, we should be very clear whose resignation we want. But all that does not happen. So what are we going to do by, democratizing the process? Democratic processes sit on top of engineering processes, management processing, and then on top of that, the democratic, values come, whether we want to participate in that or not. Most of the people will not know what is hydrologic process, what is limnological processes, and so on. So basically, we should look at the engineering problems, and the solutions have to be engineering wise. Similarly, whatever the management problems are there, the solutions have to be management solutions. So who is going to implement? I don't see our elected representatives in the axis of like corporators, MLAs and MPs working on that. Neither the MPC is going to work on that. So these two recommendations that we should go the democratic path basically is not going to work on that.
Okay. Anyone who wants to take this from amongst you all? David?
Yeah, just two thoughts. One is this idea of kind of devolution, down to the grassroots sort of thing is in one way positive. I think the thing to be aware of is you essentially create more and more silos and more separate actions and so on. So again, unless you understand the full consequences of what all those actions are going to be, it can potentially, a solution here can cause a problem somewhere else. And the other thought that came across my mind is a big thing in new startup companies and so on is this whole concept of doing the right thing is more important than doing things right. So in other words, you can do something very professionally, very well executed and so on, but if you've done the wrong thing, you're better to do the right thing, even if you're not as slick at doing it. And an example would be, Mumbai with the Meechi River. They've widened it. They're a fantastic engineering project. It drains expertly and so on. But on its own, that was not the right thing. They should have thought it through a bit more and done a bit more so that you manage all situations.
Right. Most appropriate time to bring in Mr. Tippeswamy. Thank you, Mr. Tippeswamy, for having raised your hand. Would you want to speak now? Mr. Tippeswamy, would you want to speak now? Okay.
Yeah, I would like to.
Thank you. Go ahead. Respond. Yes.
I heard all of them, most of the eminent speakers. See, the concept, perhaps many of you may not be aware, we are preparing, master plans, both by many of the institutions to meet the requirement. Incidentally, BWSSP has done a master plan for 2050, a vision document, what it should be and how it should be. We should be able to meet the requirement of water for the growing population till 2050. So the whole thing boils down to concept of one water concept. Unless that is really taken seriously, I think there is no solution for Bangalore city. Keeping in view of the fact that we are 3,000 feet above the sea level and our resources are far away, and we don't have any other resources. I think, one water concept has to be put in place, and this has been clearly said in many reports. As Lele has said, that the Gnana Ayog and all that, everywhere we have mentioned what need to be done, as in macro and micro level aspects of the whole institutions. I think in my way, I can go on, replying to people who have already spoken, but it's take at least about 1 hour or 1.5 hours. I think I don't want to get into that. So resource management is something very important. And in that concept, I think we should look at how best we have to, conserve water is something very important. And that score, we are not doing much. And rainwater harvesting basically is something, of course, stormwater management whole concept is something which needs to be addressed. I think a lot of things have already been addressed, and recently CAG has also given a report that how BWSSP, BBMP should work together. I think one small aspect is this: all the stakeholders have to realize, and they should come together in order to make sure that this water problem is made sustainable in the long run.
Right. There are 3 hands that have gone up. Sandeep, you got to speak. I would be well please you, but now you must speak. Sandeep. Yes, please. Yes, Sandeep. Unmute. There's a lag somewhere. Sandeep Aniruddhan, can you hear us? Okay. No. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, please. Finally.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in fact, the questions on governance and democratization bring up some of the discussions we had in the morning, and that reminded me. Like I was saying that people should attend board committee meetings to understand its potential. Most often, people come back with a retort that, well, I've attended a ward committee meeting and they all say we can't do anything because the powers lie with headquarters or different departments and things like that. Most people don't realize that it's not a silver bullet that delivers all the solutions today. I'm somebody who's been attending ward committees for the last 3 years. And I've seen the amount of transformation that happens not only in the process of the ward committee itself, but also in the capacity of citizens. Now, most citizens don't understand planning. We are not taught this in school. Most of them don't understand anything that any department does. They don't understand who are the officials. They don't know how the political structure works, because our education system is a complete failure. It is by attending these meetings that we even start understanding how governance works at any level. So it's a process between how much I understood governance 3 years back to now. There's a sea change. And between how officials used to respond to us 3 years back and how they respond to us now, there's a sea change. Today, we demand things from those officials. We know all the officials by face. And when we ask something, they take it seriously. It wouldn't have been the same 3 years back. So what I mean to say is it's a process. If somebody asks me, will Metropolitan Planning Committee change anything? Metropolitan Planning Committee is an ask. What will happen if it is empowered today? It's not going to solve all of Bengaluru's problems today, but it will set us on the course of solving it. Are we going to solve all the problems of the last 200 years in one day? No, but it will certainly set in, it will start off the process that will help us change by shifting the paradigm. It will shift the frameworks. It will shift the demands. And I'll give you one thing. If somebody asks me, well, are citizens aware of all the things? Well, let me ask you something. When floods happened in, say, 2005 or 2006, did citizens know what the cause for the flooding was? Did citizens even know that there are lakes in Bengaluru? Did they know about buffer zones? Did they know about Rajakalways? Rajakalway is a completely new concept for most citizens. Now, today, when flooding happened, literally everybody is talking of Rajakalways. It's a sea change. A decade back, nobody knew what Rajakalways was. So what I mean to say is, when citizens are allowed to engage, then they learn. Capacity building happens through engagement. If our school system had less classroom education and more of an open education, if children were allowed to just, move around their environment, their neighborhoods, their common departments, by the time you're an adult, you would know. But today, because people have started engaging with ward committees, they're learning all of these things. What I mean is, another 5 years, we'll all be experts. And that's where we should get.
And yeah, for want of time, I'm sort of stepping in, but you are making eminent sense. We will work on these things, on how we get more engagement from citizens. Nirmala and Gurudas, if you don't mind, I will request Jeet Kumar Gupta to speak first, because he is chairperson for the Green Building Council in Chandigarh. He's written a very lovely paper, and I'll request somebody here. Pallavi, can you put up his link for that paper? Some of the viewers here might want to sort of read that later. Jeet ji, please. Aap aise, you must turn on your video also if you can, please. Thank you. He's speaking from Chandigarh.
Right. Thank you, Hari ji. I think I don't have a...
It's okay. I will enable that if possible. Go on, please. Please speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hari ji. I think the one thing we have to all understand, wherever there is a problem, solution lies therein. We don't have to go out, So therefore, if there is a problem.
Yes. What happened? We lost him somewhere.
No, he will be able to join us. He will join us, the panelist. He'll able to on his video also now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hariji, I'd like to submit, only a few points. Number one, whenever there is a problem, solution lies there and then. We don't have to go out, We don't have to search out. If the problem of flooding has happened, the solution also lies within the Bangalore itself. I think Bangalore, the problem has its genesis. Flooding has a genesis, not like it has been said in a year or two. It has, perpetuated over the number of years. The cities are very, very old. I think this total context of flooding cannot be, solved by individual. So everybody has its own, mechanism, suggestion, but it has to be collective effort, right from the beginning. I think where we have gone wrong and where the things goes wrong, is basically the kind of planners we do a job, The day we are planning, I think if we mark the water bodies which are existing and they are clearly demarcated, protected, and they are not allowed to be urbanized, I think many problems could be sorted. Number two, there are very low-lying areas. Unfortunately, when we do the urban planning, we don't study the structure of the city, don't study the physiography of the city. What we do, we even propose the, low-lying land for the urbanization. And that's where we go wrong, If Chandigarh has today's, lake, it is not a natural lake. It is created as an artificial lake for the reason that it was a low-lying area. Secondly, I would suggest, number one, that we should look at the planning, the ways the city is being planned. Number two, secondly, I would like to say, we must have a kind of mechanism, all the way we are building. What we are doing, we are taking away the green area, and the capacity of green area absorb water is enormous as compared to the, the red area or the area which are we plastering. So I think Bangalore will do well, Number one, to create a kind of bylaws that whatever plot you have, the amount of area you cover in the building. Suppose you have 1,000 square yard plots, you are given 60% coverage. You cover you are taking away 60%, 600 square yards of green area. The builder or the person has to make sure that 600 is compensated within the building itself, So there is no reduction in the green area. I think they can make a bylaw. This is not going to be a difficult one, Secondly, we are looking at the urban context. I know the problem in India is that we have a, this monsoon, which is concentrated on a very limited period, and you don't know the intensity. And that's why this drainage system can withstand that kind of intensity because you can't predict it. But nevertheless, we can minimize. What we can do is, like, in American cities, there are a number of cities. People are fined, people are supposed to pay cess, because the government says you are not supposed to throw the water which falls in your house. You have to retain the water on your house. So the people who have these hard surfaces do not have the, they throw water, rainwater when it comes out, they have to pay the taxes. I think that's good one. The last point I would like to make is that let water not be treated as, water as a supply. It should be water management. I think we have to graduate from the water supply to water management. And secondly, we should not look at city alone. I think we look at the periphery. If the agriculture remains the main, culprit of taking away the groundwater, I think the city wastewater with certain kind of treatment should be used for agriculture purposes, so that you are able to integrate the ground and water. And last year, for all your roundabouts in the all your roundabout which you have traffic rotaries, they are all made green. They could all be used for storing water, which can be used for watering the city. There are a number of solutions. Thank you. Thank you.
Nirmala, after you, Dr. Gurudas.
Hi. I want to respond to what Sandeep and Nagesh were saying, and kind of connect that to what Dave was saying as well. Solution in silos in one area kind of creates a problem, in another area. That is kind of one of the reasons that the KC Valley, which is one of the valleys in Bangalore, and the reasons for flooding, which we have brought it forward to government in various forums. That is the diversion. The streams connect to the lakes, and the lakes in turn connect to the rivers. Right. So in this case, it's the KC Valley streams connect to Dakshina Pinakini River. And each of these lakes, which you guys might have heard of, Bellandur and Vartur, are on the tail end of the KC Valley. So most of these upstream lakes, in the name of development, have been diverted. As in, what does this diversion mean? There's a stream that brings water to the lake, right? But instead of bringing fresh water or the flood waters, 10 months out of a year, it brings wastewater, very much like the Methi River or the Coombe River, other urban rivers in India. So to prevent the wastewater entering the lake, right? So we're not looking at preventing and addressing the pollution at source, but we are diverting the pollution to downstream water bodies. So that's what the diversions are for. So the sewage doesn't enter the lake, which in turn also what it does is it doesn't allow the flood waters to enter the lake. So that results in your prevention of rainwater recharge. That increases the load of the pollution downstream water bodies. And such diversion are in place for most of the lakes in KC Valley. So what this means is that all the waste ends up in the Dakshina Pinakini River. So that's one point. And the floods this year obviously is because of, one of the reasons is it has showcased the way it has is because of the high intensity rainfall. But there are floods prone areas year in and year out because of these diversion channels also, which need to be addressed here. That's one point I wanted to kind of bring about. And here, discussions at the ward level in terms of the management of the lake, the development of the lake, needs to be connected with the larger discussion of the river basin level. Right? So if we are disconnected there, then such solutions of diversion actually falls in place. So this is where I kind of talk about at the ward level is your frog's eye view, at the river basin level is your bird's eye view, and you need to have connectivity between those two. So the siloed approach and the problem doesn't get transferred downstream. So I do have a point on BWSSB and Karnataka Knowledge Commission, but we will talk about it if things come up in that.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead and say it.
So this goes back to the discussions and email also with regards to BWSSB, and Karnataka Knowledge Commission has very good recommendations with regards to that, where they say revise the mandate of BWSSB. So it kind of says, let them be responsible for distribution in the urban local body. Right now, they're also bulk suppliers, right? So instead of also remove the bulk supplying and let them only be in charge of distribution, both local and imported, both surface and groundwater, both rooftop and wastewater. And it's saying you also be in charge of supply and demand side management. So, and rename Bengaluru Water Supply and Sewerage Board to Benguluru Water Board under BBMP. I think some of these recommendations from KJA is definitely worth looking and analyzing and kind of taking it to the administrators and the politicians and the government at different levels, ward level.
Fantastic. I think Sandeep has also heartily agreed with you on that one. We need a longer conversation, Nirmala. You are very insightful on some of these specifics. When you talk about the tail end of Benguluru connecting to, Dakshin Pinakini and Nandi Hills, you need to show it visually for a lot of people here to connect into that cascade of things that we're talking about, going to Malur and then further south, east and then south. We will come back on that. Dr. Nulkar, Gurudas, please.
Yeah, so the point I want to make is about the recent flooding situation which happened in Bangalore, and I just want to superimpose what we learned, our learnings in the flood study which we did in the Konkan area, which was in Mahad of the Kal, Gandhari and the Savitri rivers. So somewhere in the frenzy of making our cities more taller and more beautiful, we completely overlook a fact that flooding is a critical ecological function of every river. And it's a most important natural characteristic which every river, especially monsoon rivers in India, are bound to have. Now, when does a flood bother us is when it get converted into a disaster. And that is when we have urban conglomerates building in the blue and the red lines of the river. Now, what is happening in urban development is that we are converting the contours and topography of our cities. We are making it flatter. Now, a river or a stream is a set of points which connect the lowest points in the landscape. And the natural flow of overland flow has to be towards a stream or a river. Now, when you're making bungalows, when you're making contiguous road dividers, when you're making large scale buildings which need flat ground, then the overland flows are dramatically going to change. They will not follow their natural drainage path, which is going to drain into the river. That is the first point which we completely overlook in urban development. And the second point which we overlook is that the river banks have to be kept open. They have to be free. We are building contiguous we have contiguous construction along the streams and the rivers, which does not allow the overland flows to reach the rivers. Now, that is a perfect recipe for flooding. And these large bungalows, we are making large walls on the bungalows with no regard to the flow, incoming flow and outgoing flow. We are making contiguous road dividers, which are absolutely two separate rivers which happen in the excessive rains which are flowing. All of these have contributed to the overland flow. Now, if you couple that with what one of the panelists just said, that we have created hardscapes everywhere in the city. Now, those hardscapes do not allow any kind of percolation, which means almost 100% of the water is going to be overland flow, which does not reach the rivers, and it's going to be a saucer.
Absolutely. Every house has become a dam. BK Prasad. BK Prasad is chairperson for Karnataka for Indian Plumbing Association. You want to speak, BK?
Yeah. Very good evening.
Good evening. Yeah.
See, I have been listening to all the experts today. In fact, I was about to speak to what Gurudas just now said that. Forecast for Bengaluru.
Yeah. Sorry. I did something, and you've been promoted. You can now turn on your video also, Prasad. Yeah. Yeah. Are you there? Yeah, there you are. Go on. No, unmute, please. Prasad, you have to, yeah.
I'm sorry. Forecast for Bangalore for next 25 years, we are going to receive excess rain.
Sure.
How do the city planners plan the drains? They take the peak load, the factor of safety, they plan the drains. But as Gurudas just said that, we have blocked all the, overlands basically. And where does the water go? Simple. Okay. There is no other way. This year it has rained 180% more. 180% more.
BK, let me ask you like this. Since you represent industry, which is probably a little more willing to listen than the government is, with all the wonderful things you're hearing from these people who are not just exponents or experts, but also people who are doing, what do you think industry can do to pick a leaf or two from these guys and make it happen? I mean, it's painful to hear Dr. Nulkar say, well, we build apartments and homes with every single place not letting water to breathe or to flow. What are we doing to ourselves? What is industry doing? What can you do about it? As an industry person?
See, basically, industry can only follow the law. Like if the law says you cannot build, they will not build. We have to protect the areas, like the water flow. As an industry, we can only say save water, do rainwater harvesting, and all these things. That's all. But when a city receives 180% more rain, and this is going to be a common thing for the next 20 years.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want, okay, we are receiving a little more, but I can tell you that Bangalore is still receiving about 1100 mm.
And fortunately,
amount of rainfall every month.
Unfortunately, Bangalore is sitting on a hill that we can easily drain the water out.
Okay, anyway, I'll leave that there.
No, I'm telling you now, we can easily drain the water out. Only thing is we waterways which take the water away. Otherwise, nothing can be done, sir.
Okay, I got that. Nagesh Aras, you want to say something very quickly before I turn to the speakers for one last round of 60 seconds from each of them?
Yeah, Nagesh, I do have one detailed root cause analysis of the floods, which which actually has engineering, management, institutional, multiple categories of problems. Okay. You need a separate session for that. But briefly, let me touch on two specific issues which we have. Number one, 6 years ago, BBMP actually digitized all the drains and everything they had given out contracts to digitize this data. And they didn't pay these contractors. So contractors have not given that data to BBMP. BBMP still doesn't have all that data. That means all the drains do not, the digital modeling of the, the entire hydraulic modeling of the city cannot be done. Number one. Number two, as on today, that money is pending and the data is not in BBMP's possession.
Okay.
Number two is, I have this, I asked this question to Chief Engineer of BBMP, Stormwater Drain, and he told me in a meeting that the SWDs are not actually designed for the treated sewage that goes into the this one. We are talking about 1,400 MLD of water flow in the city, and that applies specifically to the end series areas like Benguluru and other things, because all that accumulates here.
Correct.
So if you are not even ignoring 1,400 MLD in our daily calculation, what do we expect? Is it a wonder that we are having floods? Our stormwater drains are first of all not designed to handle, and then we have floods, which are, I will, if you permit me, I will specifically cite 3 existing, current flood cases and the root cause analysis. Just three specific cases, namely Epsilon, okay, Rainbow Drive, Ecospace. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
Right. All 3 have 3 distinct reasons, and they are all stupid reasons, if I may say so. Number one, the Epsilon is directly in the the path of the water when the it flows out of Benguluru region, lake, and it goes towards Vartur, Amanikere. Benguluru, Amanikere, and Vartur. Right. It's a low-lying area.
Correct.
If you see the the area adjacent to the Bund, actually Benguluru Bund, the people who have built, who are actually occupying that area is raised by 30 feet, 3 floors, to prevent their area from being flooded. Epsilon did not do that, and now they are paying the price. So you build a 6 to 16 crore villa and you pay the price. What is the surprise in this?
I call them IMM graduates, not IIM graduates. Myself graduates.
Sir, 16 crore villas built in low-lying areas which are getting flooded.
Mr. Nagesh, I think we need a longer conversation again. We will probably do that. Like Sandeep was saying earlier, we need a lot more engagement first.
Yes.
And like he gave the example of getting 5,000 people to shame somebody into action. He keeps talking about Hind Swaraj and 1908 of Gandhiji. Now the last 60 seconds each for the distinguished panelists.
Let me complete the Rainbow Drive, if I may. This is a very interesting case, why it has happened.
Okay, maybe 30, 40 seconds. Very quickly, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rainbow Drives actually straddles over BBMP and 2 other villages which belong to Zilla Panchayat. And they have not planned together for their, drainage systems. And the terrain is sloping towards BBMP from those villages.
Got that.
So the overflow from 2 different lakes actually flows into Rainbow Drive. And the Sarjapura Road acts as a dam, because all our roads are actually cutting across the valley.
Absolutely.
And they act as a dam. There is no culvert.
And we had probably 8,000, 9,000 cars stranded for 7 hours on that day, the deluge day.
Yes.
Simply because of Rainbow Drive and this block. Okay.
Yes, sir.
It's very easy for us to get reactive. Arun Sitaram, I'm very glad you've raised your hand. Go ahead, please.
Sir, I'm only coming from a government point of view that everybody seems to be giving advice to the government, but nobody wants to do anything about it.
Correct.
In the government, the attitude is very simple, sir. I am right, he is right, but collectively we are wrong, and we live with it. As simple as that. Unless somebody comes and ties both of us together and says, together we can solve this problem, it's not going to happen. I have seen this over the last couple of years. You can keep writing a lot of policies, nothing will get implemented. They will announce it to say we are solving this problem when a situation comes. But to see real action on the ground, somebody has to work this on a mission mode to bring this interdepartmental discussion. We've had challenges when we have been working over the last couple of years. And unless we have an anchor who's really going to drive that in the government, these changes will not happen. Problems are there for a very, very long time. We can keep listing those problems, but if we find solutions and take that incrementally a delta X every time, I think we will be able to achieve whatever we want to in a shorter time frame with lesser amount of budgets. Like you rightly pointed out, I think industry has a role to play. Why can't some CSR come up on a mission mode solution to say, at least in the next 3 years, these are some of the problems that we will solve immediately, and make sure that government will support us and put this forward and say, we will anchor it, right? Somebody will take the ownership and say, we'll anchor it. The moment you expect government to say, you anchor it, you don't know who's going to anchor it because they have interdepartmental issues that they have to address. We'll continue to do the same thing in the next few years. I don't think we'll be able to solve it unless we have somebody who's going to anchor in the government and has support from industry as well as government and the people. And it'll definitely not be a politician for sure.
Right. But you identified a good streak of optimism, Arun, when you said that if there is this one person who can catalyze and connect departmentally, interdepartmental kind of interactions are brought in,
there are people.
It happens. Now, you are one of them. You are one of them. You're being modest in the sense of what you have managed to do in the last, say, 2.5 years with the higher education ministry, with all the multiple challenges that you have. So how do we find such Arun Sitarams in ways that water and other utilities can also be sort of rationalized?
Sir, you have to find a thick-skinned person who will be there and who will take each of those experts who are sitting across the table to tell both of them that both of your solutions are fine, but we will implement what is possible right now in our hands. That's the only way you can go forward. Because every expert will say this is the right way and this is the right way. And government will have 10 experts, will give you 10 directions to go. But at the end of the day, you will see nobody will go anywhere because government says, I don't know which expert I should go with. Unless we move that on mission mode and say, no, we will solve this problem and then take this incrementally over the next 5 years and say, this is what we need to do and achieve it. It's not going to happen. Policies are written, sir. Vision documents are written. They're all nicely kept, published on Twitter. And after 3 months, it's just lost its reason. It is quoted everywhere. In all publications, it is quoted. The policy accepted is quoted, but never implemented. That's the reality I have seen over the last couple of years. That's why it needs an anchor. It needs somebody who will drive. And there are people in the government who can take that responsibility, but we need to make sure that enough pressure is told on the government to identify this one person and say, you drive this, you are responsible for Bengaluru, solve 1, 2, 3, 4 in the next 3 years. Let us see how that goes. Industry will say, here's the CSR fund that I will give you exclusively for this project. Government doesn't have the money. We will raise the money from each of these areas, innovatively collect taxes for these as well. No problem, people will pay. A lot of apartments who don't have rainwater harvesting, penalize them heavily and say, if you don't pay that here, this is the money you're paying for Bangalore. And get it done. You got to do that with an iron fist to get this happen. Otherwise, we'll have these same meetings another 5 years from now, and we'll continue to have much more complex problems than these, including people issues that are going to happen.
I don't think the government is so incompetent, you know. Governments are there.
Sir, it's not about incompetence, sir. It's about saying who's going to start the work.
Yeah,
it's not about incompetence.
Who catalyzes?
There are examples where city have done wonderful, you know.
Of course,
and it is because of the leadership.
Yes.
And that's what we are, you know, having a problem. If you don't have a leadership, that doesn't work, you know. It's only the government which does it. What a smart city does, you know. Bangalore is a smart city where they are spending money, you know. I think that's the understanding they have.
Point taken. But why we should listen to Arun is because one of the things he managed to do is this as a minor miracle, and then we will move to the 60 seconds. He has got, for the first time in the history of polytechnic institutes, and we have about nearly 100 such polytechnic institutes in Karnataka, they have got 100% admission this year. 100% admission in government-owned polytechnic institutes, state-owned polytechnic institutes, has happened this year. And how did that happen? It went one step at a time, as Arun said, and it needed perseverance. It needed constantly talking to departments. Like J.K. Gupta is saying, well, you know, but per se, governments are not incompetent. It's just that they're not talking to each other. It happens in companies. Why should it not happen in the government? So now, Nirmala, Gowda, I'll start with you. Your 60 seconds, please. Whatever you think will be that one single thing that can bring good governance beyond governments too. You're to unmute. You're to unmute. Unmute. Yeah. No, something wrong. Yeah.
Yes. So just one line here is that Karnataka Knowledge Commission's state water policy, can we rally behind it? I think that's just the takeaway I want for the audience today. Yeah.
We'll work on that. We'll get Sandeep to also come in. We will see how you will show something at the city level of what happens between, shall we say, is it northwest or Nandi Hills down to southeast and whatever. We'll work on that. We'll work on that. Point taken, very quick. Thank you. Gurudas?
Okay, this is like a rapid fire. Okay, so 2 points. One is that water is far too precious to be left to one department. We have to have a multiple departmental skin in the game of water management. One. Second is the water use of cities per capita is increasing, but it's not the consumptive water use, it is the non-consumptive water use. And therefore, consumptive water use is what we need to drink or in the kitchen, but non-consumptive is what we throw away, you know, the laundry and the washing and so on and so forth. Therefore, if the non-consumptive water is increasing, then we must have a pricing which is based on value of water, which is use-based pricing and volume-based pricing. These are the two things for a water-scarce, monsoon-fed country like India have to be incorporated when you are trying to manage non-consumptive use of water.
You know, on this use-based pricing, you said this earlier, I didn't want to engage you. Sorry to, take time on this while there are other people to say things. My only challenge is this. 12 million people in Bangalore, 5 million of them don't use more than 60 LPCD. They're all in the slums and in the marginal whatever kinds of living, right?
Right.
They pay 250 rupees per 1,000 liters. I pay 80 rupees per 1,000 liters. 3 times more they pay. Absolutely. Now, if you say use-based tariff, if you ask me to pay tomorrow 400 rupees per 1,000 liters, I will still pay it. I won't bat an eyelid. And I will continue to rise my non-consumptive use, because price is not a challenge. You saw what is happening to this country. No one has stopped riding more because you had the oil price crash the 100 rupee mark. It will not happen. That is, price will not be a deterrent for consumption is what I think, Gurudas. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right.
No, we will have this on another day. But the reason why price cannot be a deterrent at this point of time is because pricing and enforcement is very unfair in India at the moment. So if we want to make it more fair, we have to bring automation into it. We have to remove the people dependency in pricing and water distribution. If that is done, then pricing, value-based use-based pricing is very simple with IoT and metering.
Yeah, sure.
But another day.
Another day, absolutely. David Shackleton.
I think my concluding thought really is this: you have to keep doing what you're doing. You're going to keep getting what you're getting. The analogy that I often use is that if we go back to the early 90s, I was in Africa at the time. We saw this new emerging thing called the internet, and we said, we are going to be left behind. There's going to be a next wave of industrial technology revolution. We can't run copper cable all around Africa to connect everybody up. And I'm sure the same would apply to India. What happened was wireless came in, and I was part of introducing wireless into Africa. And that was a completely transformative technology that gave a leapfrog way of catching up and so on. And that's why I agree with Sandeep. If we are only going to rely on the engineering and technology solutions from the colonial era, from the Newtonian era that the Western world used to build itself, then the emerging economies and so on are not going to catch up. You cannot. There has to be, and this is our whole approach, there's a whole new technology that has to be bolted onto the previous technology, and then you have a holistic solution. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting.
Lovely. Vijayaraj?
Sir, I feel that zero discharge should be the way forward, from at least to start with the larger communities, which will result in a lot of water problem solving, solving the lot of water problem, both in flooding as well as water shortage, which can be implemented at local level, instead of depending on government, and this should be the way forward, I think. which can be implemented easily and immediately.
Sure. Mr. Tippaswamy, after that, I will call upon Sandeep. Mr. Tippaswamy, do you have anything to say? 1 or 2 sentences, please, if you do. Okay, he's not coming in. Yeah. No? No. Sandeep, please. Over to you. Sandeep Anirudhan. Sandeep? Yep.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, love.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so it was fantastic listening to everyone. My brief note would be that we are at the cusp of, let's say, explosive change right now. One, we're faced with literally extinction. I don't want to sugarcoat it. We're looking at mass extinction in its face. The only hope that we could probably survive it, or our next few generations can survive an apocalypse like this, would be that we wisen up, and we wisen up quick. But if you look at the trends, they are somewhat positive, because the traditional information, what do you call that, disparities are changing. Capacity is building among people, not purely about information on issues, it's also about policies. There's a lot more engagement. This is changing very rapidly, and this is where I see hope for us to survive. We are, for inspiration, we have to look towards Kempe Gowda's generation, or the one previous to it, the Cholas. When communities built reservoirs that we call lakes today, and the cascading river systems, they did not have architects, they did not have engineers as we know them today, but what they were essentially using was technology and engineering. But they also had a bigger science. They understood nature, they understood ecology. This is where we have to go back to. We have to understand ecology, we have to understand environment, we have to understand engineering as well, and everything. And most of all, we need citizens engaged in every sphere of activity to drive a battle towards, not a battle, let's say, to drive the course towards sustainable development. But
Absolutely.
see, sustainable development is something people do not understand. It's too hazy. If we use something as simple as water to use as the fulcrum for that movement, people understand it easier. So if we can lead a water movement where people all start engaging, it will eventually lead to sustainable development. So I think this water campaign is an excellent idea. We can use it as the kind of the bait for people to participate in a movement towards sustainability and sustainable change, and to deal with climate change. I think that's a great way to go forward. Thank you.
That's a very, very provocative, in its ways, and very reflective also, Sandeep. Dr. Raval has been putting up a few of these notes. I request you all to look at them. We'll of course share all of these notes that you appear on the chat box with you all later. Vijayaraj Deshpande, I'd like you to see if you want to say something, since you have raised your hand there. And it's the first time you're speaking here. Vijayaraj. Well, he's raised his hand, but he's not around. All right. Wow, I've never had a conversation like this, which has busted the 2-hour kind of mark. And thank you for being there. And I'm seeing that there are nearly 50 people still here. Only about 6 or 7, by the way, dropped out. What does it tell me? I don't know yet. I think it leaves us, like all of you have said, in a way, in this kind of a group of people who know that this is the right thing to do, but who need to also ensure that they work with the government in a way that we bring perseverance, like Arun said. People like Nirmala are bringing a lot of insight. She's not worked in this area for a long time. It's less than a decade, I think, Nirmala, since you got into this.
Yes, 7.
About 7, 8 years. I think we need more such, youngsters who come in and are able to bring some new dimensions. If anyone else has anything as last words to add, I'll be happy to, we'll all be willing to learn from that. Anyone, anything.
Hariji, I would like to say,
Yes.
Society.
In fact, we are looking at floods,
Yep.
And each city has, there are few cities which are flooded, and they are all mega cities.
Yeah.
Only thing I would like to say, floods are specific problem. They're not perpetual problems.
Sure.
So therefore, in order to have, we know the best practices, we know the solution everywhere which has been applied, but I feel and I will suggest, for solving the problem of Bengaluru needs a detailed study of its structure, physiography, its topography, and its development, before we come back to the specific solution. So I think we can apply the other formulas, but I think this needs a study.
Sure. And let me also add, JK, for you and for the rest, that today was not just about inundation threats that the city is facing. We have got less than 46%, 45% of our water coming from the grid. Do we need the grid is one of the questions. We didn't answer it. We didn't raise it here today. But when we talk governance, we realize that out of 200 crore liters or 2 billion liters that Bangalore is demanding today, less than 800 of it, 800 million, 0.8 billion is coming in from the grid. I won't say from Kaveri, because even the grid is using tube wells now to the north of Bangalore and Hesarghatta and places like that. So these guys are it's like having the fox protect the chicken coop. So these are the guys who are bringing such enormous damage to this whole system that we don't need them. They've completely outlived their utility and relevance. So we don't need something called, somebody said, I think it was Haran who said, and what's his name, Sharad Lele has said this forever, that we don't need a water supply board. What we need is a water management board, right? Or a water governance board. So we have issues that seem Himalayan, but they're actually very simple. Like Arun said, if we persist, we persevere, work with some of these fellows in the government, because these are the guys who can bring the greatest damage. They're not the best doers, but they bring a lot of damage. And that's the reason we need to protect ourselves from the government, if I may say so. Anyone who wants to say anything, or do we close now? Do we wrap the show?
I would just say, we have to change our philosophy from draining water to retaining water.
Of course.
How we do, we change the retaining water and make city spongy, and we find the option for that. That's all.
So far as the floods are concerned, there is the one app developed by KSNEMC called Megha Sandesha. It actually is capable of giving us day-to-day warning of which area of the city are going to be inundated today.
Fantastic.
Right? No, my point is this, that do we need a warning that so-and-so area is going to be underwater today? Or rather, we basically, if it is so predictable, why can't we actually avert that flood in the first place?
I know. I'm not going to respond to this. We know the answers are obvious to these things. We'll leave it here. Well, like all wonderful things, this has got to end, which way over 130 minutes now. Thank you, David. Thank you, all of you, Gurudas and Nirmala and, Vijay, of course. He's not here. Sharad is not here. And the rest of you who joined in to make this happen. Sanjay Gupta from Hyderabad, thank you for being here. I know you're doing, in your own quiet ways, whatever you're doing to nurture such market ecosystems for bringing change. But one Sanjay can't do it. We need, I don't know, maybe 100,000 Sanjays to make things happen. People like David are trying. People like David are coming to India. He's being extremely polite. He's not an Indian, therefore he's not saying it. He finds it impossible to deal with the government. And he wouldn't want to say it, of course, on camera here. But we all know it's no surprise to hear such things from people like him. I don't know what this is about. Sometimes I think that, it's good consolation to know that so many more, that you're not alone, that there are a lot of us who want to see that we battle this. Thank you, Arun, for coming in. I know you're doing some tremendous work out there, in the government, but you're not in the domain of water. But we need to see how we push each of these frontiers. You at least learned, this mechanism of managing and manipulating the government to good ends. And I'll leave it there. Therefore, Purushottam has raised his hand. Do you want to speak? Someone, Purushottam here? No, it's okay.
Sir, how do we contact each other after this?
Yeah, we will reach out to you, Nageshwar. Thank you for asking this question. We will reach out to you maybe by the morning. Thank you, Gurudas, for saying that. But I deeply appreciate your having been present here for all this 2 hours now. And this recording will now be broken into multiple parts. We are working on the previous one. We want to try and see that we make short video extracts out of all that all of you have said and take out those essential things which will possibly be read by youngsters. People between 20 and 35, 20 and 40 who can possibly learn from all those things that you all said. So we'll do that as soon as we can. Thank you so much once again, and have a great weekend. Right? Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Rahulji, for being here. Well, I didn't invite you to speak, but well,
thanks.